But I'm joined now by the MP for Reform UK, it's Lee Anderson, and public satisfaction with the NHS has hit an all-time low as just 24% of people across Britain say they are satisfied. I'm surprised it's that high. This figure is 29% lower than before the COVID pandemic and an enormous 46% lower than in 2010. And stories are now emerging about how the record-breaking strike action by medics is having fatal consequences. Just yesterday, an inquest heard how William Guy, a 77-year-old grandfather from Anglesey, died after waiting almost 32 hours for an ambulance because paramedics were on strike. Mr. Guy broke his hip after falling in the bathroom of his care home. Without medical attention, he developed pneumonia and he tragically passed away. Lee Anderson joins me now. Thank you very, very much. What should be done to stop something like this happening again, do you think, then, Lee?
Well, we already have an Act of Parliament which was passed last year, Patrick, the minimum service agreement, but it doesn't seem to be working that good because this particular case is a shocker. Now, I think a lot of this, Patrick, has to lay on the conscience of the people that's taking strike action. If you take strike action and you're a doctor, a nurse, an ambulance driver, whatever, then lives will be put at risk. And I'm fairly sure, because I've spent time with some of the ambulance staff in Ashfield, spent a shift with them and going out to different calls, and the majority of them are decent, hard-working people who do the job for the right reasons, and they hate to see this sort of stuff happen. But you have to bear in mind, Patrick, as well as this, there are lots of people who are calling ambulances on a daily basis who are just time wasters. We had one particular case where one chap in Ashfield, he called the ambulance 100 times in a month, and I think the worst thing he'd got wrong with him was an headache. Now, these sort of people, once they start, ringing the ambulance service on this sort of level, should be charged every single time. Okay. That would go some way to helping. And also, we've got the backlog at A&E and stuff like this, which doesn't help. But really, if you're an ambulance driver and somebody dies on your watch because it's taken you 30-odd hours to get there, then that's on their conscience.
So would reform ban NHS workers from going on strike, do you think?
Well, it's very interesting you say this about reforms. I was speaking to my colleagues in Reform today about this very thing. We're having a serious discussion on this topic next week at our meeting.
So it's possible. It's possible. You're going to have a talk about it.
Anything's possible. There's got to be a consensus, but nobody likes to see emergency workers on strike because the consequences, Patrick, as we've just learnt on your programme, are devastating.
What would your view on it be, Lee? Do you think you should ban it? I mean, what will you be arguing in that meeting?
My personal view is that emergency workers should not be going on strike. Full stop. That should be in your contract. I mean, what would happen, Patrick, if the police officers went on strike, our army went on strike, our prison officers went on strike? The country would come to a standstill. There has to be a moral obligation from these sort of workers to make sure that even when times are tough, you do your job.
OK. All right. Well, look, regarding the inquest into William Guy's death, Sonia Thompson, who's the Assistant Director of Operations for the Welsh Ambulance Service Trust, said that they had planned as much as practically possible to minimise the risk to patients on strike days, saying that the unions opted only to attend immediately life-threatening calls and that some categories were deemed as critical. So obviously, some people slipped through the net. Now, Lee, just moving it on, Joseph Fritzl, the man who kept his daughter captive for 24 years, has said that he wants to emigrate to the UK and, quote, roam free on the Highlands of Scotland. Well, the Home Secretary set about putting British minds at ease. James Cleverly said this monster is never coming to our country and any attempt to travel to the UK will be refused, as it would be for anyone convicted of a serious sex offence like this. But Lee, quick as a flash, you replied to your old colleague, unless he jumps on a small boat in which he'll be in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel by tea time. I mean, look, to be fair, if the Abdulaziz case, Lee, nothing would surprise you, would it?
Well, I mean, if this Joseph Fritzl wants to roam free in the Highlands of Scotland, I've got good news for him. It's highly likely that if he jumps on a dinghy in northern France, he could be in northern Scotland the following afternoon. Because, it's all right the Home Secretary saying this. I'm surprised he's actually tweeted this, Patrick, bearing in mind we've had 120,000 plus come over the Channel in small boats over the past 3 or 4 years. Some of these have been rapists, murderers, paedophiles. This Fritzl chap, like I say, he can just jump on a dinghy and come. And the chances are that if he gets into difficulty in the Channel, he'll probably get picked up by Border Force, then shipped to a processing centre, then put in a 4-star hotel where he can probably complain about the Wi-Fi, and then then he can hop it up to Scotland. And if he don't like it up there, he can come back, claim asylum, about 3 or 4 times. And the good news is that if he's scared to go back to his country, wherever he's from, on a religious basis, he can just pop into the local church, get baptised, Bob's your uncle, British citizenship. It's nonsense.
All right. Did you ever like James Cleverly?
Yes, I get on really well with James, but I'm just surprised that an Home Secretary, after 120,000 people have come into the country, and we've only removed, excluding Albanians, we've only removed probably less than 1% of those. He can actually say that this person can't get into this country. We can't stop them.
And what is it? And what is Reform's policy to stop this now? Then, so no one.
Send them back. You know what the Reform's policy is, Patrick. Send them back the same day. If the Border Force can pick them up in the Channel and bring them over to England, Border Force can pick them up in the Channel and take them back to France.
And you would go into French waters and
I would drive the boat myself, Patrick. And if you want to come along, let's do it.
Well, so you would. This is interesting. So if you do get re-elected, right? And well, I mean, if Reform won the election, I suppose it would take. So with respect, not the most likely thing in the world, although the way things are going in the polls, you never know, Lee. You would be driving a boat yourself and towing them back to France.
I tell you what, there was plenty of boats went over in 1945, Patrick. We can do it again.
Right. Finally, Lee, at the weekend, you filmed yourself doing your bit for the environment and getting right behind the drive for net zero. Let's have a look.
Just cut my lawns with this electric lawnmower. It's got batteries on, look. Look at that. That's net zero at its finest. Trouble is, I've charged this up early on today, and probably electricity has come from Radcliffe Power Station, just about 10 miles down the road. That runs on gas and sometimes coal. What a load of nonsense that is, net zero.
Well, that annoyed all the right people, Lee, including the Just Stop Oil and Labour Party donor Dale Vince, who said, "You have no idea what net zero means. Your lawnmower is not an example of that. Britain's grid is nearly 50% renewable now. That's the better measure of what is powering your battery-powered gift. Even if you were using power straight from Radcliffe, that's 3 to 4 times more fuel efficient than a tiny lawnmower engine is. And there's no noise or air pollution for your neighbours, other than you spouting off, of course." Lee, you going to come back to that?
Well, the only pollution here, Patrick, is Dale Vince's nonsense, which he spouts out on a daily basis. Ask this eco-loon how much money he's made in the last 30 years from renewables. I bet he's made absolutely millions of pounds. He's got a vested interest in this net zero nonsense. The people that I associate with, Patrick, in Ashfield, my constituents, my friends and family, they have to worry about paying their energy bills. This person doesn't have to worry about a thing. He's got probably millions of pounds in the bank. He makes a fortune out of this net zero journey. He needs to shut up or come up to Ashfield. I'll tell you what now, I'll invite him on your show now, Patrick. Come up to Ashfield, to one of the miners' welfares, and speak to some real people about their energy bills.
Right, OK, just quickly then. So if I put together a show that involves you and Dale Vince in Ashfield, you think you could make that work, yeah?
Let's have him up here. Bring some vegans with you as well.
Right, OK. Lee, thank you very, very much. That is Lee Anderson there, the Reform UK MP for Ashfield.